staggering increase over just 12 months. At the end of 2014, we had 219,000 arrivals on the Mediterranean to Europe. That was already a record. This is almost 5 times that level. In addition, tragically, we're also seeing an increase in the number of deaths. Almost 4,000 lives lost in 2015.
Adrian Edwards of the UN saying that fatalities at sea are on the rise as Syrian refugees continue to flow into Europe by sea. Last year, more than 4,000 died, and less than a week into the new year, there is more tragedy. 21 bodies belonging to refugees from Syria found washed up on Turkey's coast. According to Turkish officials, several of the bodies were those of children attempting to cross the sea to seek asylum. For more, we welcome from Newsmax New York, Gulwali Passarlay. He knows what it's like to be a refugee, having fled Afghanistan at the tender age of 12. He's also the author of The Lightless Sky, a 12-year-old refugee's harrowing escape from Afghanistan and his extraordinary journey across half the world. Gulwali, we thank you for your time tonight on Newsmax Prime. You went through this firsthand.
Thank you for having me.
We're so pleased to have you, and Happy New Year, but the stories continue to be grim about refugees fleeing the Middle East and hotspots around the world. You went through this as a refugee yourself. What's your reaction to what we're seeing right now?
Indeed, I think it saddens me that the situation has not improved since 8 years ago. I made this journey myself. It took me a year before I made it to Britain at a very young age, and I think I hope that we will understand through reading my book and through me sharing my story that people live with extraordinary circumstances. People doesn't have choice. War in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan and elsewhere. People are faced with really difficult decisions. Parents, families are faced to make those decisions to send their young children away to safety. And then what happens along the way is a tragic. It's a tragic and it's really sad.
Now, as I understand it, in your situation, you and your brother initially traveled together, but you became separated. When you look back to what transpired to you now, almost a decade ago, what was your most harrowing experience?
I think the whole journey was hard, leaving my mom, leaving my families behind my country, and then going to the unknown. I had no idea where I was heading, the uncertainty, and then being in the hands of human smugglers, traffickers, and being at their mercy. So the hardest moment for me was actually crossing the Mediterranean, because now when I see in the news people dying, as you rightly pointed out, last year in 2015, over 1 million people crossed into Europe. About 800,000 came through the Mediterranean, and so many died. I was supposed to be one of those people. I could have been one of those person who been killed in the middle of the sea, but I was lucky. I survived, and I'm very grateful for being able to speak to you now, because I saw death with my own eyes.
And understandably, you were able to flee as a young person, and while the UN talks about the current crop of refugees, if you will, being family-oriented, there are contrary reports that we're seeing, by and large, men of military age. And of course, we have heard from ISIS that organization is trying to make sure that part of its roster, if you will, is coming with the refugees. I guess the question is this, Gulwali. Obviously, it is a heart-rending situation. But do you see the concerns that people in the United States and some of the European governments have about just allowing the Syrian refugees and others into their respective nations?
Sure, I think it's a very good question. I think people have a right to be concerned, but I think I respectfully disagree with the fact that the so-called Islamic State will send their fighters on this dangerous journey, because it's too much of a risk. And also, logically, it doesn't make sense for them, because they want people to see that the so-called Khilafat is successful. They don't want people to leave, they want people to stay. My big concern is that homegrown terrorists, whether they be radical Muslims or non-Muslim terrorists, are a problem. I think what we need to do, we need to show compassion, we need to show love, this is a humanitarian crisis. This is the largest since World War II. And countries like Britain, countries like the US have a responsibility, not only a moral duty, but it's a legal obligation to welcome refugees, to treat them with dignity and respect. And those people
And here's the sticking
like
point,
us.
Gulwali, because as I talk to you, it's obvious that you have assimilated into Western society. The concern is so many people come, and while you want to be humanitarian, it seems at times, we've seen reports about Some of these refugees actually complaining about what they're fed, complaining about where they're housed, and it's troubling, not to mention the fact they seem to fail to assimilate. What can refugees do to improve their lives? 20 seconds.
So I think I have visited the jungle in Kali and I saw their condition. It's very inhumane. It's unbelievable that human has to live in such a condition. People flee Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan because of war, because of conflicts. And what we need to do is there could be a very minority, a few people who will be ungrateful, but majority people will be like myself, who will be grateful, who will contribute to society and become active citizens, become global citizens, and will play their part to make the world a better place.
Gulwali, we thank you very much for your time and your insights. Again, the name of his book, The Lightless Sky, a 12-year-old refugee's harrowing escape from Afghanistan and his extraordinary journey across half the world. We'll be right back.